Wouldn't it be better if you put her someplace?
You mean an institution? A madhouse?
You just found the marble in the oatmeal. You're a lucky, lucky, lucky little boy. Do you know why? You get to drink from the fire hose! Okay, you ready? Open wide! I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
Hey, you want to see crazy?
You really are crazy.
I don't get it, Doc. I mean, how can all this be happening? It's like we're in hell or something.
No, it's Hill Valley, although I can't imagine hell being much worse.
Now you want to get nuts? Shut up, you freak! Come on! I said shut up! It's a madhouse! A madhouse!
Hello and welcome to Movie Madhouse, a podcast about films lost to the annals of time. I'm Travis Fishburne.
I'm Alex Brunel.
And this week we will be covering the Barry Levinson film Toys.
Yes. And before we dive into that, we just had a couple other things we wanted to say. Firstly, we are doing this episode at a time in the United States where there are mass protests going on in support of the Black Lives Matter movement, and a lot of things. There's a lot of information to process. This is not the venue for it, and I don't think we are qualified people to be talking about it, really. But our hearts are with the people who are out there trying to make a change for the better in our country. That's all I got on that. Black Lives Matter. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I do also just want to point out that tomorrow, June 2nd, the music industry is calling it a day. They're calling it Blackout Tuesday. Hashtag the show must be paused. A lot of music labels and websites are going dark tomorrow in support of everything that's going on. And in observance of that, we will also be not putting this episode out tomorrow. We'll be waiting till at least Wednesday to put the episode out on the podcast feed. So there's that.
Yep.
Yeah. So now I'll try to put those thoughts that have been occupying my brain nonstop for the last X number of days aside for us to talk about stuff and then the film Toys. Which I am actually excited about because I really love this movie. So
yeah, that'll be kind of hard to do. Maybe even near the end of this film, where I feel like there's some stuff going on that you feel like is like, oh, this is kind of it reflects some things going on.
Yeah, and I have notes about such. You know, the commentary about war in this movie is not subtle at all.
No.
But you have let's talk about some news. We didn't do this last week, but we have a little bits of Star Wars stuff that we want to talk about because we're those people. So Travis, take it away.
Yeah, because it's got to be Star Wars news, even though it's not specifically a Star Wars show.
The Star Wars font is still in our title treatment, so.
It is. Yep, and it's staying there. And and since we're doing a show about toys this week, I just wanted to talk about how excited I am about the new packaging for the Black Series figures that are going to be coming out this fall.
We have that up on the screen right now.
Yeah, and right there up on the screen is the entire Rebels line, which is going to be repackaged, and they're finally including Zeb. So you can have the whole Rebels crew.
These toys look really good. I don't think I'd actually seen these before. The toys themselves look excellent. I mean, the Black Series always looks excellent, but these I really enjoyed seeing like the lifelike interpretations of these characters, especially Zeb. The Zeb really toy looks great.
Yep, he's been the last holdout. They've produced everybody else, and but it's really cool to see how the packaging lines up to create a mural.
Yeah, I agree. I have my own thoughts on this is beautiful packaging. But I always have the problem when I buy toys like this of I will keep the packaging, which means I'll take the toy out, display the toy, and put the packaging away, and it gets very frustrating in a collector's way.
Yeah, I've had to start getting rid of the packaging. These figures themselves look great just out on display.
They do.
So I'm glad I already have the majority of these, so I'm not going to have to worry about keeping the packaging.
That's good. Are you going to rebuy for the new packaging? Almost certainly not.
No,
Yeah.
just the ones I don't have. I never got around to getting Chopper and then Zeb.
Nice.
Which Zeb, because he's a bigger figure, he's $10 more than the others.
That's
So
ridiculous.
I'm guessing he's going to be taller. Yeah.
That's silly as hell.
Yeah. But
Whatever. How much do these things retail for?
they're 20 retail.
All right.
Well, and right now I have an Ezra that's still in the package.
Yeah.
That he goes for like $70 on eBay. So what I'm gonna do is I've already listed him on eBay, and then it should be a wash with me completing the collection. I'll just rebuy the newly packaged Ezra.
Great.
So it's a wash.
It's a wash.
Did you? And then other Star Wars stuff. We never talked about the Mandalorian, specifically the episode of the Mandalorian Gallery.
Oh,
that,
the tech episode.
Yeah, with the technology.
Because I still haven't watched the most recent episode because I was I was like so with it mostly for the tech episode, and then I've forgotten that the show is on. I loved the episode about the tech. That's my favorite thing about the behind the scenes of the Mandalorian. It's just the technology they used to get it there. It's stunning. It's insane. It's very hard to distill down why it's such an insane proposition. But
for so many reasons. One thing I didn't realize was when they got somebody shooting and they change angles, the way that the background behind the actor changes along with the camera.
Yeah.
Like it's
because it has to match
virtual reality.
Yeah, because it has to match the parallax of the camera's view, so the screens have to change. That's why there's all this extra rigging on top of the cameras. It's to track. It's like the camera's acting like a VR helmet, and the screens are the VR. So the screens are reacting to where the camera is pointing, and it comes across as an absolutely stunning photographic effect, which is going to change. Like for productions that can afford to shoot in an environment like that. And right now, the volume, as it's called for the one that Lucasfilm owns, or Disney, that's the only one of its kind, although I'm sure that there are more in development. I also did notice that the first 5 minutes of that episode were straight up a commercial for The Jungle Book and The Lion King, which are two very bad movies.
Yeah, it was.
But I did not realize actually about the making of The Lion King that there was a real camera operator with a VR quote unquote camera on a tripod that was actually doing the camera movements and stuff like this. So that was interesting for me to see, but
Yeah. And then in the practical one is very cool as well.
Yeah.
And the most mind-blowing thing about it, and I was curious to get your take on this if you had seen it, is Jon Favreau at one point is talking about the holiday special and the Ewoks movies. And they actually show footage of the holiday special.
No way.
Yes, it's from the Boba Fett animated sequence.
Oh, of course.
But it's still, I was like, oh my gosh, in some official capacity, they're showing footage of the holiday special.
Well, I mean that cartoon is a Easter egg bonus feature on the Complete Saga Blu-ray set from 2011.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They haven't tried to hide that cartoon. They haven't tried to put it out there in a huge way, but they haven't tried to bury it. They reference it quite a bit.
Yeah. No, they even made a Boba Fett action figure. Is based on how he looked in that cartoon a few years ago. Yeah,
based on that color scheme, yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I thought that was cool. Yeah.
And the Mandalorian's gun is based off of that, too.
I gotta watch this episode, man. It sounds like I missed out this week. But what I did not miss out on was my opportunity to own original animation cells from the Ewoks cartoon series.
Yeah.
There's a website called Animation Legends that's selling cheap packs of animation cells from a bunch of 80s cartoons. He-Man was on there. I think maybe they had some Captain Planet and then some other like lower rent TV shows, but they also had Ewoks. So I bought a random 5-pack of Ewoks animation cells, and I can't say that I'm very disappointed with my results. I can't remember this young lady's name, but this is Princess Nisa's friend. That's her. This is the King Duloc. He's looking pretty PO'd right there. This is the weakest of the cells, this is Wicket. This is what I got of Wicket. He's teeny tiny little guy right in the corner there. We got this good one. I believe this is Tebow. Tebow's looking all either lovey-dovey or stoned. I don't know. And then my favorite one is King Duloc giving the middle finger. I'm going to get this one framed. This is really great. These are original works of art. You can kind of see the, like behind here, the original pencil sketches behind all these cell drawings. Really cool stuff. So I'm happy to have those now. That's a stupid expense, but whatever.
Yeah, no, you collect what you like.
Yeah, and I guess it's Ewoks cartoons. So yeah, did you have anything else you wanted to hit? Any news topics?
No, not really.
Okay.
Nothing outside of all of the obvious stuff that's going on right now.
Our viewership is wildly fluctuating on Facebook right now, and we lost viewers when I started showing my Ewok cells. So sorry. Sorry. So shall we move into discussing toys?
Yes, let's talk about toys.
So, as we went over last week, this movie is not streaming anywhere, which is super weird.
Not only not streaming, but just out of print in general.
And not even available for purchase used on Amazon. And used DVDs on eBay are like $30. And I do have my now $30 valuable Toys DVD right here. There was a point within the last few years where this movie was streaming on Starz, but I have to imagine that license lapsed, and now since it was a 20th Century Fox movie, Disney owns this. So who knows?
Coming soon to Disney Plus.
Can you imagine the violent toy movie that Disney owns, like, coming out? Oh my gosh, they don't own Small Soldiers now, do they? That would be a tragedy.
They would. That's Fox.
Is that Fox? Well, I hope that movie doesn't get lost to the annals of history. And I also want to point out that we are absolutely not the first podcast to talk about toys.
Oh no, it's not.
There was
DreamWorks. Okay.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Never
yes,
mind.
it was a DreamWorks movie. That's right.
Yeah.
That's good. Maybe we have hope. But anyway, we are not the first podcast to discuss toys. There was an episode of How Did This Get Made, discussing this movie. And there's also an episode of a show called The Nerdy Show from December 2017, which was the film's 25th anniversary, with an extended interview with Barry Levinson, and actually even a few words from Thomas Dolby are in that podcast as well regarding a song in the movie, which is something I'm going to get to because I do want to discuss the music in this movie, which I love a lot.
Yeah.
Just for anyone who hasn't seen it, I will briefly go over the plot of this movie. There is a toy company called Zevo Toys, and the founder and president of the company is dying and dies in the very beginning of the movie. And he leaves the company to his brother, General Leland Zevo, who's the exact opposite of the founder of the company in every way. He's a military man, practical person. He's a warmonger, basically, and doesn't stand for the fun and whimsical things that the company was founded on. Robin Williams and Joan Cusack play the Zevo children, who they kind of thought would get the business afterward, but Leslie, Robin Williams' character, is, quote, too much of a flake. So the general takes over the company, and what basically winds up happening is he pivots the company into first he wanted to make war toys, and then he decided to just full on go into instruments of war. He went to an arcade to get ideas about what kind of war toys kids might like, and then became enamored the idea of remote-controlled destructive toys, i.e. remote-controlled tanks, drones. This is a movie from 1992. This movie predates the first test launch of the Predator drone by 2 years, which, from what I've found, is, I think it's the first use of a military drone. And,
Yeah, I think
you
so.
know, there are absolutely military companies working on remote-controlled tanks. Like, there's no way that's not a thing. And the main characters go to war. Good toys fight the evil toys. Good guys eventually win. But that's actually really the whole plot of the movie. It's 2 hours long. There's not, plot-wise, there's not a lot that happens. Like, bad guy diverts toy company into making war toys, makes war toys. Good guys try to stop him, and then winds up happy. There's a lot of stuff going on in between. The main thing about this movie is how absolutely stunning and unique it looks. The movie looks like a surrealist painting. There's no other movie that looks like this. Like, straight up, there's no other movie that looks like this. And if there is, please tell me what it is. I want to watch it a lot. The easiest reference to make in terms of what this film looks like is Rene Magritte's famous painting, Son of Man, which is the tuxedoed person with an apple head and a bowler hat on top. It's evoked by the image of Robin Williams in the poster too.
And in the music video that they do.
Yeah, the music video is like a Marguerite Talking Heads mashup thing that's just wonderful. I love that sequence. So the movie came out Christmas time 1992, and for context, previous year at Christmas time, and for context in Robin Williams, for previous year at Christmas time was Hook, big hit. Earlier that same year was not only Aladdin, which had just come out a few months prior, and
Just the previous month.
Robin Williams was not doing any press for Aladdin, was doing a lot of press for toys.
Yes.
And just a few months before that was Ferngully. And not long after
right.
this was Mrs. Doubtfire. So it's like it was a hot point in Robin Williams'
Oh,
career. And the movie bombed hard. It's not hard to understand why by watching it, because it looks like a kid's movie. It is not a kid's movie. It gets very dark.
It does.
Barry Levinson described the movie as a black comedy in primary colors, which I think is a fantastic way to describe it. The trailers were kind of confusing and weird. They didn't really show what the movie was about. The main trailer for it was actually just Robin Williams out in a field riffing like he does, and it's great, but it has nothing to do with the movie. And it doesn't tell you anything about the movie. Yeah, I have many pages of notes, and I could just read them. But Travis, what are some of your thoughts on toys? Had you seen this film before? Remind me.
Yes, I'd watched it growing up. Okay. So while it is not a children's movie, I always kind of thought of it as a family film because I did watch it.
Yeah, no, same.
Probably I should not have been.
Same.
But yeah, I recall it being scary in parts, and rewatching it this time, I was reminded of that with the General Zemo character, and especially the scene where he goes to the arcade and he starts taking out the UN vans.
He starts gleefully, like, with it in this video game that he plays, you're supposed to shoot the tanks, and you're supposed to avoid the UN relief vehicles that also drive through the video frame. And he becomes enamored with the fact that he can just destroy the UN vehicles and leave the tanks alone, and is taking every minus 1,000 points as a score for him. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way that, like, you hear the screams I just remember, I don't want to say being traumatized by it as a child, but being like, oh, this is scary. Like, why is this guy doing this?
Yeah, and the battle scene at the end gets very intense for I mean, even as an adult it gets pretty intense. Not like really scary, more kind of just like, I have more to say about that when we get to that point in the movie, but like it's tense. It's very tense and pretty violent. There's not like people being shot, but it's not for lack of trying.
Yeah, somebody could have easily died.
Yeah.
He could have easily murdered his own son remotely with a toy baby.
More people did die in the original script to this movie, I learned. But yeah.
Interesting.
So what did you think of it now?
I mean, I still really like it now.
Cool.
It's interesting the filmmaking techniques that are used, especially there near at the end. A lot of the shots that were turned into like slow-mo shots, and the intensity there. I'm like, this is interesting. It seems disjointed at parts too.
Yes.
It almost feels like there was a longer cut.
I'm sure.
Where there are like just scenes. Like you go from one thing into another, and I'm like, oh,
yeah. There's key.
I'm expecting more connective tissue here.
Totally. There are key plot points that are sometimes nothing more than like a fleeting line of dialogue that isn't addressed before or since that line of dialogue, and it's very easy to miss certain dots that you can connect if you're paying very close attention, and that is one of the failings of the movie. I mean, like it's not a perfect movie. There's significant issues with it, but and that's one of them, which is that like, yeah, sometimes the actual plot threads are kind of obtuse.
Yeah.
I definitely do want to discuss the issues I think the movie has. And I do want to make this clear. I personally feel the positives of this movie far outweigh anything that's working against it.
Oh yeah.
Even though in like any movie, if this movie didn't have these visuals attached to it and had these problems, don't care. Do not care about this movie at all. But in this set of circumstances, man. So I'm just going to get into talking about some of the personnel who worked on this movie. Barry Levinson co-wrote and directed this movie. His first movie was Diner. Also directed Avalon, Rain Man, Good Morning Vietnam, Wag the Dog. Lots of incredible films. And this film, even to this day, is a total outlier in his filmography. He has not made another movie that comes anywhere close to what this movie looks or feels like. It was co-written with Valerie Curtin, who was, for a time, Levinson's wife. The first draft of the script was written in 1979. It was revised in 1982, and then again in 92. It was actually the first feature that Levinson wanted to make. But in pitch meetings, basically, there were no other movies that existed for him to say, oh, it's kind of like this, which made executives very scared to go anywhere near it, and that's part of why it took so long for him to get it produced. Director of photography was a man named Adam Greenberg, who has a long and wonderful filmography, including, and these are just the highlights. There's a lot of other really great films in there, but these are just the ones that I was like, oh my god, the same guy did all this. Terminator, Once Bitten, Near Dark, Ghost, Terminator 2, Sphere, Rush Hour, and ostensibly one of his final films since before retiring, Snakes on a Plane. A man named Matt Beck worked on the VFX. I know his work from, he was the visual effects supervisor for a lot of the X-Files, but he, again, has a long and wonderful body of work. Rob Bottin is responsible for a certain robot in the movie that we'll talk about when we talk about that character, about Joan Cusack, who is secret. Who is
I was like, is it the sea swine?
No, but we can talk about the sea swine. But Joan Cusack's character is secretly a toy the whole movie, and Rob Bottin did that effect. And Rob Bottin's work you would probably know from his makeup effects work in The Thing, RoboCop, and Total Recall. Everything that you remember that's gross from any of those movies, you have Rob Bottin to thank for that. Mark Sullivan did the matte paintings, and in this movie it's maybe a little more obvious than most what the matte paintings are, because they're these beautiful landscapes and things that are kind of obviously matte paintings, but at the same time, like, there's not a lot of CG in the movie. It's a lot of practical effects. It's a lot of like real stuff going on, and the look of the matte paintings definitely lends to that. Mark Sullivan also worked on matte paintings in RoboCop, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, The Abyss, Death Becomes Her, Demolition Man, and Star Wars Episodes 1 and 2, actually.
Wow.
Ferdinando Scarfiati was the production designer. Doesn't have a ton of credits to his name. One of the significant ones is The Last Emperor, but holy crap, I don't even know how to conceptualize where you would even approach making this movie from. Like the pop-up book house, like just like these kinds of visuals. The most respect to this.
The elephant that rains snow on the factory.
Yeah. I love the recurring elephants in the movie. Like there's the massive elephant that rains snow. There's the elephant tomb that the dad is buried by, which flies at the end of the movie, which you can kind of plainly see is hung on a giant string. And I'm pretty sure what they did was they put the thing on a friggin' helicopter and just towed it around, which is like great. We are dropping frames like crazy. We're frozen.
Oh no.
We're frozen. We might be coming back.
All right.
I guess.
If you can hear us, clap, everybody.
Yeah, I guess. Oh gosh. Yeah, I guess someone. It looks like we're not dropping frames now. Okay. Edward Richardson was the art director. Linda DeSena, set decorator, and Albert Wolski, costume designer. Amazing work by all of these people. Oh my God, this is like, these people, like, some of their works include Scarface, Cat People, Star Trek the Motion Picture, Blade Runner, Buckaroo Banzai, Back to the Future 2. The costume designer was the costume designer on Grease, and Manhattan, and Galaxy Quest, and Birdman, and Across the Universe. Just like an amazing assortment of talent behind the camera. And I also would like to take this opportunity to just talk about the music in the movie, which is the score is composed by Hans Zimmer and Trevor Horn. Probably a lot of us know who Hans Zimmer is at this point. Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, that piece of music that's used in every trailer.
The Lion King.
Lion King. Name me some other Zimmer movies. I know you got them.
Man of Steel.
Yep. Yep.
The Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. So
the second and third one, he worked with Klaus Beddold on the first one.
Oh, okay. And Trevor Horn was his co-composer. And for those who may not be aware who Trevor Horn is one of the most prolific music producers and significant music producers of the 80s and 90s. He was a member of the Buggles. You may remember their hit Video Killed the Radio Star. But they were very much an art pop band, and those two albums that they made are like these really beautiful art pop albums. He went on to co-found a found sound music group called The Art of Noise, which is a favorite of mine. I love The Art of Noise. They wrote one of the sexiest songs of all time. It's called Moments in Love. Look up Moments in Love by Art of Noise, and if you don't want to get down afterward, I can't help you. Trevor Horn was also in Yes for a time, and was the producer on Owner of a Lonely Heart, which totally reinvigorated Yes's career in the 80s. Trevor Horn, amazing musician. Shirley Walker was the orchestrator on the film, who worked as Danny Elfman's orchestrator for a long time. We're dropping frames again. Are we just freezing? I don't know what's going on. Shirley, she did that. She was also the composer for Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond. She composed the score for the Crispin Glover version of Willard. And Bruce Woolley also makes some musical contributions. And again, this is not a name a lot of people know, but Bruce Woolley was, before there was the Buggles, Trevor Horn was working with Bruce Woolley in a group called Bruce Woolley and the Camera Club. And Bruce Woolley and the Camera Club's first album is actually where Video Killed the Radio Star originally appeared. And Trevor Horn and Bruce Woolley co-wrote the Mirror song, which is the music video song in the middle of the movie. Where they kind of hijack a security camera and pretend it's MTV and have a surrealist music video in the hallway. One of my favorite sequences in the movie.
When I was watching that, I immediately thought like, oh yeah, I've seen this is in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. this predates that.
It totally
they do the
does.
exact same thing. Yeah.
The Mirror thing. It's called the Mirror song. And that song is sung on the soundtrack by Thomas Dolby, who I may know from the hit She Blinded Me with Science in the 80s, but was also a musical pioneer in a great many ways and had worked with both Trevor Horn and Bruce Woolley a lot prior to that. So there's just a lot going on. The opening theme song, which is the closing of the year, is actually a really beautiful Christmas song. And I have learned that like this song has since wound up on a lot of like Christmas compilations. It's known to just play on Christmas radio on like in grocery stores and stuff on their Christmas playlists. It's a really nice song with some like really sweet lyrics. That's sung by Wendy and Lisa, who were associates of Prince, and an uncredited Seal actually. Sings a verse of that song, so there's that as well. When Sarah and I were watching, we were like, oh, who's this singer? We should know her. And then I looked it up and I was like, oh, she worked a lot with Prince. Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome.
Wendy and Lisa are heavily featured in Purple Rain. If you want more Wendy and Lisa, go watch Purple Rain. Even if you don't, go watch Purple Rain. Just go watch Purple Rain. That is a strong recommendation from me to you. On the soundtrack is also a sung by Tori Amos. She did not write it, but the song "The Happy Worker," which is the kind of like dancey 90s like marchy song that they play when they first take a tour of the factory, is Tori Amos. Her first album had just come out like not long before that, and her music does not sound like that song, but it's a great freaking tune. I think the score is great. I think the music is great. I could and would talk about just the music for probably a whole podcast, so I'll just like stop that part now.
I love the music. It felt to me, those instances of the music feel a little disjointed with the rest of what's going on.
The sequences that are almost musical sequences.
Yeah. And it didn't pop out to me like as a kid as much as it did like this time when I was watching.
Sure. One thing that I did listen to the episode of The Nerdy Show with Barry Levinson on it, and one of the things he said is that like he said that he always felt that they were just like moments away from just making the final push and making the movie a musical. He a lot of the songs were written before the movie began production because they needed them on the set. Like obviously like the opening song and like the Mirror song, those songs were written before the movie started shooting. Yeah, I guess I should have started with like the overall notes before I got really down to the nitty gritty stuff, because I have this whole section of like overall stuff. Yeah, I mean the conceit of the film is, what if military toys were literal toys? That's the whole conceit of the film, and that's also reality. I mentioned that this was the first movie that he wanted to make. The original script is actually remarkably close, from what I've read, to the final film. One of the major differences is that in the original draft of the script, the Owen character, the assistant character, is killed by the general, by the sea swine. and the general also winds up dead in the original version of the script, which were both dialed back.
In the original, I was wondering this because I knew like how far back the idea of this movie dated with him. How much? I mean, the whole like arcade and remote control drone aspect seems so part of the time it was made. Like, how does that play into the original idea?
It was there.
Really?
It was there.
Interesting.
The idea,
Wow.
basically the idea of VR warfare is a part of the original 1979 screenplay.
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
Um,
It's like prior to like the Last Starfighter and stuff too,
Yeah,
where
and prior to-
similar ideas.
and prior to war games, and you know, like, yeah. For the way he talks about it is like he didn't find it difficult to make that leap. He just saw, oh, what's this now? Where could this go? Oh, look, that's very easily militarized. Like, he described it to him, it was like just a very logical process in his head of like one thing leads to the other, and then this is where we wind up.
Yeah.
Which is,
Wow.
yeah, very much. It's prescient as hell. And you know, by the time he's getting it produced in the 90s, then he can actually say, the studio's like, oh, there's this aspect that's like The Last Starfighter, that's like War Games. At the time, he didn't have that reference. At the time, he didn't have those movies to say, look, this other thing did a thing that we're talking about too.
The people who's trying to sell the movie to are probably like, I don't even know what a video game is.
Exactly. In 1980, I'm sure they didn't.
Yeah.
You know, and even past like how prescient the movie feels in terms of like VR warfare and drone warfare, and also I read some criticisms that made it seem like this movie was trying to link video game violence to actual violence, and I don't think the movie was trying to do that at all.
No.
I think the movie was very much just saying like, look, this is what video games are, and if these kids are trained in these video games and you make that real war, there's no difference. Even, I believe, this is totally, I didn't actually look this up to verify, but if I think that there are US submarines that there are certain controls in that are controlled by Xbox controllers, because at a certain point the control system for the things needed to be updated and reconfigured, and when they were trying to figure out the best way to do that, they found that a lot of the crewmen were already familiar with such a layout from growing up with a video game controller in their hands, so they started using off-the-shelf Xbox controllers as a means of like actually controlling military equipment.
Wow.
So like this is not fiction. I mean, this is just stuff that's happening. And I also read that Sphero, the company responsible for the Star Wars BB-8 toys, was constantly pushing back offers from the military to buy their remote control tech, which completely makes sense.
They wanted to militarize BB-8s.
Yeah. And even think of like VR movies. Those didn't really start becoming more prevalent in Hollywood for another few years. Like I think Lawnmower Man was 93.
Sounds right.
And then Johnny Mnemonic and like all these other like 90s computer movies. You know, they
92 is that same
92.
year.
So like yeah, it's on the cusp of like all this stuff that's going on.
And then there was also the Nintendo Virtual Boy.
Yes,
which came out. That was in 95.
95. Yeah. So yeah, and that stuff being predated here a bit with the Woozy helmet, which was just like a VR fun ride that's in the movie.
Yeah.
But back to the war thing, even past how that feels prescient, there's this scene where Leslie is he's stumbled across the sea swine tank, and that's basically like, it's basically a submarine, like a weaponized submarine that's disguised as a sea creature, or that's made to look like a sea creature.
Yeah.
And Leslie falls in the tank, and Patrick, which is the general's son, played by L. Cool J, and the assistant, or no, another guy, Hogenstern, who's one of Adam Sandler's regulars, who I didn't look up his name, but he's in the movie. And the general orders it to continue. And that very much like, Leslie is being attacked by the sea monster. And at that moment, there's the general denying that it's a sea monster and also making sure that Leslie stays in the tank. This feels very much like a certain person we've been dealing with in the United States for the last few years. But so that kind of thing. The domestic tagline of the movie was "Laughter is a state of mind," which is a terrible tagline. Yeah,
it really does not. I don't know. It has like little to do with the movie itself.
Yeah, and the international tagline I think is actually really. It's a fantastic set of words that I feel like should be on T-shirts, and I feel like is like really valid right now, which is "Make believe, not war."
Yeah,
I love that. I love "Make believe, not war."
That's in the trailer too.
Is that in the trailer?
Mm-hmm.
The one that you watched? That's good. Yeah, and so I have this long list of just visual stuff that I love. Maybe before we dig into that, we talk about the cast a little bit. I feel like you have some cast notes that you'd like to go over.
Well, I mean, there's just like the obvious ones.
Robin Williams is the lead.
Robin Williams is the lead as Leslie Zivo, which you'd mentioned the Aladdin coming out the month prior, and I'm sure this is in your notes as well. The whole Robin Williams with Disney, the falling out due to the way that they marketed Aladdin, because the timing of these movies coming out, he had it written in. He didn't want to do Aladdin, but he allowed it to happen, and he wanted them to not have the genie take up more than 25% of the poster, because he did not want them to oversell him being in the movie, because all of his, he was diverting everything towards, promoting this movie. Right. And Disney completely blew that out of the water.
Oh yeah.
If you see the Aladdin theatrical poster, and
yep.
So it was a big falling out between him and Disney due to the way that they marketed that film.
I believe he got a Picasso out of that.
He did, when they decided to make up, and he's like, all right, I'll voice him again in number 3.
Which we've also talked about.
Yeah. And then old Michael Gambon, which everybody knows as Dumbledore. So
the evil General Leland Zivo.
Yes, this is my first time watching this. After being so used to him as Dumbledore.
Yeah,
being this like warm, wise Yoda-like, fatherly character, and then seeing him in this role, which is quite terrifying.
With a really funny excuse as to why he's like an American warmonger with a British accent that he can't shake. And I think the justification is just about like a place where he was stationed and he can't shake the accent now. Like he's seen speech therapists and can't get rid of it.
Wow. Yeah. And then LL Cool J. I always remember this movie with like having LL Cool J in it.
He's really funny.
Yeah, he might be, other than Robin Williams, like to me the standout like character in the film.
I totally agree.
My favorite scene is when they're like driving back after having dinner, and he's like, "Stop the car, I'm getting out." And his dad's like, you don't have any idea where you are. He's like, exactly. He's like, always in training. He just runs out.
Into the field, disappears. He does that a couple times in the movie. He's just like, all right, I'm going to go. But we can give you a ride back. He's like, no, I'm just going to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And all the gags like that he creates where he like comes out of nowhere or he's hiding.
Well, he's always in camouflage. His first appearance in the film is he's camouflaged as the couch. And he emerges from the couch, and it's an amazing costume where it's actually like the upholstery from the couch that's sewn into a military outfit, and he's wearing it right down to the beret. Like,
he blends. And he's wearing it for the rest of the night.
Yeah, for the rest of the night. He blends into an orange wall at another point in the movie just by hanging out in the corner. Yeah, his outfits are fantastic.
Stand up that pops out and is a decoy.
Right, he makes a cardboard cutout of himself as a decoy when when his dad's coming to a meeting that he himself arranged.
Yeah. He's the original Gene Parmesean from Arrested Development that Lucille Bluth is always freaking out over.
Yes, that is accurate. That is totally true. And he's got some of the funniest line reads in the movie too. It's like, "Are you disrespecting my duplication investigation?" And just these lines of dialogue that he really chews that are really funny. His whole rant about I'm a military man. I like a military meal. I want my peas sex quarantined from the mashed potatoes. And like, he's great. This is really great.
And Joan Cusack being in this film. A film called Toys, in which she plays a toy,
which we don't learn until like way late in the movie, like basically the very end of the movie. There's like a moment where we're supposed to think that she died, but we quickly learn that she was just a robot the whole time that Papa Zivo made to keep Leslie company after his wife and Leslie's mother passed away.
I find it interesting that just a few years later, she then plays a toy in Toy Story.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
And she does a voice alongside, after Jim Varney dies, Blake Clark, who plays Hagenstern. So.
Oh.
Because he voices Slinky Dog after Jim Varney passes away.
That's right. Forgot that. I love her character in this movie. I love her performance in this movie. I love if you watch the movie from the outset knowing that she's a robot or like a weird toy, her performance makes a lot more sense. But also just kind of viewing her as a kooky person that does this work in the factory. What she does in the factory is she's the dress designer for the dolls, and she accomplishes this job by occupying a human being-sized dollhouse where she puts on human being-sized versions of the paper dresses that go on the dolls, complete with a plastic wig. And that's her job. She's the doll fashion QC and designer, and that's her role at the company. And it's fantastic. I love that scene. Yeah.
Then we've got Robin Wright as Gwen. And
she's one of the problems I have with the movie.
Yeah,
not her character.
Yeah. For whatever reason, I knew, I remember Joan Cusack being the robot. But for whatever reason, I thought, like, is Robin Wright also a robot?
Because in your memory, that's what it was?
No, I don't know. I knew for sure that Joan was.
Right.
But I couldn't remember because they talked about, like, because the Anastasia character says, "Oh, I've been like waiting for like you two to like finally meet," and I'm like, "Is this like is there some kind of like a setup going on here where it feels like she was like so created specifically for Leslie?"
There's a line of dialogue, and this is like this is in my list of the movie's problems. There's a line of dialogue that indicates that Papa Zivo hired her to eventually meet Les and become his girlfriend. Like, really, like, she was hired by Leslie's dad because he thought that she would be a good match for Leslie. So his way of putting them together was hiring her, and then, a superior in the company is going to fall for a subordinate. And like the way the flirting is in the movie, and like it's like not only is it like a bad example of like a meet cute and this setup, it feels very weird and like not pro woman at all. But this movie, I can't think of a movie that needs a love subplot less than this movie.
Yeah,
it adds literally nothing to the movie.
Yeah. It just kind of like. It's there.
Yeah, she's there, and she's not unfunny. Her performance is cute, but the character is like beyond useless. It's literally just like a subplot that's 20 minutes of diversion from everything else that's going on, and it's totally not needed. But it's also an interesting thing, like, to remember this was at a time when like literally every movie like must have a romance angle. If your movie doesn't have a romance angle, why are you trying to make it? Hollywood might say. Because every movie from the time had a useless romance angle. That's I think one of the movie's biggest sins is like that character entirely and everything surrounding that character. And we have Debbie Mazar in the movie, underused and really only in the movie as a plot device to turn Patrick against his father. Really, the movie has a character problem, right? Like, the characters are mostly funny, but they're vehicles for the themes and visuals, and they're not really interesting by themselves. Like, again, if I'm just going to watch a movie and it's these characters and none of these attached visuals and not this attached world, I don't think the movie works.
I'd agree. Even the original, the father, Ken of the Zevo, is played by Donald O'Connor, who is like a huge star back, in like the golden age of Hollywood. And he was Cosmo in Singing in the Rain, like the big comedic character in there. And you'd think, given who he's supposed to be, it'd be a little more flashy. But the things around him are flashy, but he isn't.
He himself sits there and dies. That's literally what his character does. This movie is also the inauspicious screen debut of one Jamie Foxx. Which he does. He's just like a military guy. Like, it's not. There's no character analysis for him. He's just in the movie.
I mean, there is a little bit of like characterization with him because he's like always interested in
that's true,
like personal information about people. He's like peeking in during the lovemaking scene, and then later when they're having the that meeting in the tent where they've got the x-ray on everybody. He's trying to check out everybody's junk.
Yep. I love that scene. I mean, that's in my list. Like, a lot of the things that have come up in visual stuff that we've just been mentioning, I have not delved into because I'm saving it for going over this like long list of just like stuff I think is really beautiful in the movie. Which I guess I might as well just move into. Right? Should we move into that?
I'd say go ahead and do that.
So I think the thing that draws me into this movie the most is the world feels very complete, and the movie totally inhabits that world. David Lynch does this very well. Terry Gilliam does this very well. Like, my favorite filmmakers, this is what I love most about them, and it's why I love David Lynch's Dune, because even though Dune is not a good movie, I've seen it dozens of times, and I could not possibly tell you what it's about, but it feels like it was shot on other planets. It does not feel like it was shot on Earth. And there's a lot to be said for just being able to create an environment that feels complete. And I think that complete environment is the Windows XP desktop background. I think that's the world in which this movie takes place.
That's right. And because, I thought about that while we're watching it. It's like, we see the general leave and we see the interior of the arcade, and that's the extent of the outside world we see. Everything else is within the factory and just those surrounding fields.
Right. And it's like literally these big, lush, rolling hills of wheat fields, and then just one single lane road that swirls down it. And these were all locations. Like, these were all, the sets were real, and those were real locations. It wasn't like they were on some little part that had some grass and they filled in all the grass and sky later. They shot that sky and there was all that grass around because that was movie making in 1992 for that kind of thing. And the movie is so much better for it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
And it was shot in mostly Washington. Is that correct?
That's what I read. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The opening song. I love the design of the Christmas tree, where the children are kind of lined up in the bleachers that make up the Christmas tree, and they are the Christmas ornaments with the lead singer up at the top as the star, which that's just great. There's the miniaturized city that the kids and the toys play inside of, but is also the view from the office, from the general's office. It's the main office view of Zevo Toys. It's a skyline view, but it's not a view to the outside. It's the toy skyline. Kenneth Zevo, when he's dying, he's got this spinning beanie on his head, right? And it's connected to his heart. So when his pacemaker stops working so well and his heart isn't working so well, the beanie stops spinning. Like, what an amazing life monitor. What an amazing visual of his life monitor. The first appearance of inside the house, we pull up to Leslie and Alsatia's house, and it's a pop-out house, right? It's a flat thing. The pop-up arm comes down, the house extends out. We cut to inside the house, but we haven't cut to inside the house. The camera pulls back in this perfectly centered frame to reveal that that's a dollhouse version of the room we're actually in, as Alsatia is playing with dolls in the dollhouse. It's stunning. I don't know how you can get a more beautiful scene than the tour of the factory. I love all those are sculptures. Those are works of art. These things that are quote unquote making the toys as this song plays, and like, I can't even imagine being able to be on that set and see that stuff in real life.
Yeah, like when they show the factory, I look at it and I'm like, whoa, they do not make things like this. Is such a huge set and all the details in it. They don't make things like this anymore.
No, and that was one thing that Levinson mentioned in the interview I heard with him, was that like that was all like sculpted, real, functional. That wasn't like miniatures that were put in, like composited in afterward or any kind of other effect. Full scale statues, sculptures built, just amazing. Talked about, there's a scene where they turn in Leslie and Alsatia's house where day becomes night, and it's literally just outside the windows. They change the backdrop that's outside the windows from the daytime backdrop to the nighttime backdrop and change the lighting, and that's how it becomes nighttime in their house. It's a wonderful thing. When Alsatia gets put to bed, the walls are these beautiful, like, deep blue cloudscapes, and in the middle of it is this swan that comes apart in the middle, and it's kind of like her sleeping pod, and when she goes to sleep, the thing closes and she's enclosed in this beautiful swan sculpture. Not too long after that, Leslie is wearing his sound suit, which is a wonderful means of antagonism. I love this as a real thing. If this was a real thing and just like any movement you made horrible sound, instant purchase from me. Like, that's an amazing antagonistic tool.
I feel like it's a real possibility.
It's got to be a thing,
even
right?
more so now. Yeah.
The duplicating room is beautiful. The stretching machine where they're determining how far the little toy can stretch is a beautiful thing. And then the general comes in and he's wearing Technicolor camouflage. He's wearing pastel yellow, pink, blue, and green camouflage, and it's this really weird freaking thing.
It's so weird that he's wearing that half the time, and then the other half of the time his uniform looks like a Nazi uniform.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when he takes power and he has the painters change the decoration in his office, he changes the murals on the wall to be these kind of like fascist, oppressive imagery of, workers going to work and those in power on high, and these like stark black and white images. The cloud hallway with the rolling hills is just a wonderful visual. The clean room for testing the fake vomit. How great is that scene? In this scene, they're really studying all this kind of different prototype fake vomit, and the walls are just these white grids. It's a white room. They're all wearing like hazmat suits, so it's like a clean room. And then as the scene goes on, the walls just start compressing like they're Tetris blocks. It's not like a wall moves. It's parts of the walls move in chunks. and eventually compresses all the way down to the table that they're surrounding, and now they're on their hands and knees sitting on top of the table because the room around them has disappeared because the general is taking more space to make his war toys. And I love that scene, man. The one guy goes, "This vomit is very Anglo, very ethnocentric.
Yeah.
This is obviously the fake vomit of a white man. It's oppressive." It's great. And then like that idea too comes in, like the idea of the modular rooms comes in when we're in the cafeteria not too long after that, and they shrink the cafeteria again because the general's taking up more space. So there's this kind of like subtle idea that the whole building is modular somehow. Like you can easily move any part of it to make another part bigger, like whatever you need for the moment. And that's an interesting idea that's not dwelled on at all, but is very much seemingly a part of the construction of the building.
It makes sense if it's coming from, a toy creator.
Right.
And he makes this dollhouse, for his kids. And the factory itself, he makes it so that you can customize it and you can move the walls around like you would some kind of a toy house or toy building.
Yeah. You mentioned the scene with the military personnel in their underwear earlier, and that was for secrecy. That's this great scene where Michael Gambon leads these military dudes out into the middle of a field. They're all wearing their underwear, quote unquote, for security. And after they sit down, their meeting room is erected around them. Like the walls go up around them, and the general is using X-ray technology to monitor the meeting from afar the whole time in these great skeletons, like these CG skeletons that are perfectly mirroring all the movement that happens inside. It's a really wonderful visual, especially when the general starts choking one of the guys, and you see these two skeletons just like going at it. Looked really, really cool.
And then one guy has a piece of medical equipment in his chest.
Oh yeah, just a throwaway joke. He's got a pair of clamps in his chest.
Yeah, that's never like. I mean, it's focused on, but it's never. Nothing ever becomes of it.
Oh no, it's just a throwaway joke.
Yeah,
it's like how you been feeling? Oh, I had this surgery a little bit ago. I have some chest pains occasionally, but feeling good. And that it's just a joke.
Yeah.
The robots with TVs in their bellies in the general's office that's like his command center. Like a guy has these giant robots lining the walls, and then when he goes to war at the end, they kind of emerge and circle around his desk, and they all open up to display data on their belly televisions. So great. And then of course some of the great psychotic toys from the end of the movie, the baby in the stroller where the bottle is a Tommy gun, which leads to Alsatia observing, "That's a very bad baby." The ominous bouncing ball and the little girl doll approaching from the other side, like that's a really great visual moment. But now that I've gone over all the things that I think are beautiful about the movie, that section of the movie, the end, is where that kind of, I think, all falls apart. There's a huge tonal swing when they break into the factory. Huge tonal swing. Are you back? Okay, you froze for a sec. There you are. Okay.
Oh, I did.
You're back.
I see. I see my frozen face right now. I look terrible.
It happens. I mean, the production design remains wonderful, but when they break into the factory to put an end to what the general's doing, the characters are then not acting in any way that we've seen them act before. They are acting in service of the plot. They're just doing the things that any characters on the opposing side need to do to stop bad guy. It doesn't seem to me like they're doing anything that's part of them naturally, except for Patrick, LL Cool J's character, who's the military man. And the cinematography during that whole last section of the movie is a huge break in the aesthetic and works against what makes the movie good, I think. You mentioned the herky-jerky slow-mo, which is like very hard to kind of see past. It's hard to get real visual information out of those kinds of visuals, I think.
And it made me wonder, was this a decision they made it in the edit, and they didn't shoot it in the way they would have liked afterwards to make it slow-mo?
See, I don't even think it was always necessarily slow-mo. It looked more like a slow shutter effect, almost like choppy, like there's a stutter to it. And it is a post effect for sure. It's a thing that they did in the cut, but I don't know if that, like you said, we don't know if that was an idea visually as they were shooting it, or if it's an idea they arrived at in the edit. But I do unfortunately think it works against all the stuff that made the movie like really interesting for the first. And we're like an hour and 30 minutes into it by now. This is a 2-hour long movie, which is way too long, really. But yeah, it just. The concept of like a benevolent toy army versus a malevolent toy army is great. And the war zone itself, like of all the toys battling together, is like kind of a really great visual. And it comes kind of terrifying once the helicopters come in, actually. Like the helicopters seem very threatening. But again, a continuation of the issues above, where it's just, I don't feel like the movie allows us enough visual information at that point. Just the way it's shot.
Yeah. Almost feel like the setting for that, because that just takes place in a random, warehouse room, and then they move on, and the very final like confrontation takes place in the the cityscape scene room, and it feels like it should have led to there, or everything should have been there to begin with in some way. I don't know.
Yeah. But. The warehouse that they wind up in is they say it's the warehouse where the general put all of the toys that they were done making, because they were putting that stuff aside to do the war toys. Oh, there's a Klaatu Barada Nikto reference close to the end.
Yes.
Did you catch that one? Nice.
Which, it is crazy. Because that's like a Day the Earth Stood Still reference.
Yeah.
And like it becomes a Star Wars reference too, because that's like what I knew it from first.
Same.
And then I'm like, oh no, that's from the Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah, and
because
sorry.
Oh yeah, because the command that he gives the sea swine is Klaatu Barada Nikto, which it dates back to the day the Earth stood still, and that's what the words that are used to command the robot Gort.
Yeah.
But those are also, all three of those are the names of species on like the sail barge in Return of the Jedi.
That's where I first learned those words, and I relearned those words in Evil Dead 2, I think is where it first comes, or is it Army of Darkness where it first comes up?
Oh, no, I didn't even realize. So.
Oh yeah, the ancient words that Ash has to speak but messes up in Army of Darkness are Klaatu Barada Nikto.
Wow, it's been too long since I've seen the Evil Dead movies. So.
And there's just a couple of other like random notes I have. A lot of them are just like lines of dialogue I really liked. Like, I think FAO Schwarzkopf is a great joke. I don't know if people at this point remember General Schwarzkopf or remember FAO Schwartz, which was a huge toy store in New York City. But
it's not around anymore?
No.
Oh.
But FAO Schwarzkopf is a great joke. Alsatia's line, red means caution, or beef if it's a bouillon cube. And early on in the movie, I love this line when the general is first talking to Leslie about war toys, and Leslie's explaining that his dad never made war toys by saying, he thought war was the domain of the small penis. Which is so on the nose, and I just love. And another little note, this is like I can't believe this is the second time we're mentioning the Star Wars Holiday Special in this podcast, but the wind-up teddy bear. Remember, like in the big battle scene, there's the wind-up teddy bear versus.
Is it a sound that it makes?
Yeah, it's the sound that Lumpy makes. It's that like meow 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 meow.
I thought so. I heard that, and I was like, Did it just make this holiday special sound? But it's good to know I wasn't crazy.
Yep, nope. It's absolutely that same, whatever that animal is that made that sound is in toys. And it's really great. There's also a part in that whole final battle scene where one wind-up toy teddy bear like goes to mourn the death of his exploded comrade, another toy teddy bear, which is like, I don't know, that's dark. It's good.
Yeah.
But
the random doll that's being chased by the puppy that makes its way out and eventually out into the field.
yeah, some toys just get away. The sea swine gets away. Also, the little girl with the puppy biting her butt gets away. She lives. A little doll. I don't know. I think that's all the things I have written. Do you have anything? I just powered through it. Here's something. I listened to podcasts and YouTube videos of people talking generally on like 1.5x or like 1.75x just to get through it quicker. And when I was listening to our podcast from last week, I apparently talk too fast for me to deal with listening too fast. So, because I couldn't understand what I was saying when I sped up our own podcast.
Well,
yeah.
Let's see. These scenes, at the beginning and end, well, specifically at the beginning with the whole Christmas play and feel it's going on, it almost felt like this movie, like this scene was taken out of Hook. Like you said, like was released the year previously. And it has a lot of visuals that I feel like, match up with that movie.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I like the opening very much. Maybe it's the nostalgia part of this movie making me feel that way, but to me the beginning of the movie feels very like warm and fuzzy and comforting and just like the right amount of weird to kind of start hooking you into the world, which doesn't really start happening. Like the first we start getting the real visuals not that long after that, but then we even get one of those shots like we talked about in And You Thought Your Parents Were Weird, that's in Back to the Future, where the scene between General and Kenneth as Kenneth is dying does that thing where it shows us all the toys in Kenneth's office as the two characters talk before eventually finding them and letting them finish the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's true. Setting up the world that way. And then Arthur Mallet, who plays Owen, was in Hook as well.
Oh,
Robin
that's
Williams.
Right. That's where I know that guy from. I didn't even think to click his name on IMDb. What a jerk.
Yeah.
What a jerk I am. I am sorry to this fine actor, Arthur Mallet, who has to be dead.
And then the guy playing the old General Zemo is Jack Warden.
Yeah, I couldn't even deal with going through Jack Warden's filmography of 164 credits to figure out what I knew him from.
So prolific. Just probably a lot of people know him as the grandpa in Problem Child.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, boy, Problem Child.
The scene with him, there's at one point where the Michael Gambon character talks about some guy tried to frag him, and you have to listen and what is this guy saying? You don't know what the character is saying, but to me there's a line that he says that I'm like, did he say something about a big cock?
Yeah, he does. he mumbles and all you can really hear is big cock. He's like, no, frag, shoot.
So yeah, I was hung up on that for a while. I'm like, did he say that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's Debbie Mazar's first scene in the movie, and then she doesn't reappear until almost the last half hour of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we also talked about the Jamie Foxx character, his first movie, the robot being shot into the window while they're making love.
Oh yeah.
The fact that That wasn't brought up. Like it didn't like occur to.
No, there's weird stuff like that all the time. Like if you recall, like, they have a calm and civil, like, board meeting about the war toys in general after the general tries to get Leslie killed at the hands of the sea swine.
Mm-hmm.
As if like Leslie's just like, oh yeah, let's sit down and discuss my near death and the things that led to that. Let's just discuss it. Like,
it felt like it was one of those things where I'm like, did we miss something? Because this is and then like just the fact that the general goes just so crazy and dark so quickly. He tries to shoot the fly with the gun.
Yeah,
and
he
then,
really goes full Howard Hughes in that scene.
Yeah, and he immediately just decides, I'm gonna attempt to kill my own son by means of toys without talking to, because what spurs it on is his son finds out that his mother died not through
appendicitis, a respecter of no one. A respecter of no one.
But it was, the general's fault. And so he, switches sides and he starts siding with Leslie, and they never have a conversation about it. He never confronts them.
No.
It's, he's just immediately like, all right, well, we're against each other now.
Right.
And I'm going to potentially kill my own son.
Yeah. Because he was going mad.
Yeah.
He was going nuts. Yeah. I mean, and I wish that if I could load up this whole video stream of just images from the movie, like I could literally have been cutting to a different image this whole time and shown something completely different from the movie for the entire hour that we've been talking about it. And I would if I could. And I really hope that anyone who hasn't seen this movie and is at all curious, please seek it out. Please find a way to watch it. This is a really special movie, I think. For all its problems, it's a very special movie. But that's also something about me. I like beautiful train wreck movies. I don't think this is quite a train wreck. I just think there's parts of it that are not good. Whereas I would say something like Southland Tales is more of a train wreck. But hugely interesting.
Yeah, Southland Tales is like something I would recommend anybody watch, but I can't tell you why you should.
Yeah, same. Same. I will never not love toys, and I was glad to find, as I mentioned last week, this is a movie that I used to just say was my favorite movie of all time, because I think for a time I actually thought it was. I had not yet seen Escape from New York or Brazil. But I was very pleased to, as an adult now and looking at it with a really critical eye, to find that I still loved it as much as I did, and even acknowledging the problems it has, not loving it any less. And I had the opposite experience of a film that I liked a lot as a young person, which was the Eddie Murphy, Jeff Goldblum vehicle Holy Man from 1998, that I rewatched yesterday, and honestly cannot recommend anyone to watch. It's a really not good movie. By a director who made good stuff too. It's directed by Stephen Herek, who, aside from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which that's all you need to direct in my book to be considered like a hero. But he also directed Critters and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. And there's another one in that classic '80s era. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head now, but it's like a great movie.
Did he direct Critters too?
I don't think he did do Critters too. But my point being is that I'm happy to know that my nostalgic affection for a thing will not always completely shadow my current opinion of the thing. And in that way, I really do believe that Toys holds up. Oh, Mighty Ducks. Mighty Ducks is the other thing that Stephen Herek directed. Yeah. Yeah. He hasn't done a lot of amazing stuff lately, but like late 80s, early 90s, solid dude. I know a guy who once dated his daughter. That's a trivia fact. Yeah. Grace Jones.
Other things of this movie is just like what you said about just the visuals and the fact that I was reading an old review of this movie from like when it came out, and they talk about how up until this point, Barry Levinson, his style was that he had no style.
Yeah.
And like you said, this is like the outlier where
this is
you
all
see
style.
Yeah, and you feel like this movie comes from an auteur, but it doesn't. So
one man with an out there idea. Yeah, I mean, like a way that Robin Williams was characterizing this movie at the time in press was David Lynch's Babes in Toyland, which is also like a pretty decent way of putting it. But I can't think of another movie that is, and again, please, if someone knows a movie that looks as cool as this and sustains it, I want to watch it really hard, but I can't think of another movie that is a surrealist painting, except it's a movie. And it's really a work of art. This movie's a work of art. I love this movie. I gotta stop just talking about it. It's
Oh yeah, Barry Levinson went on to direct Envy in 2004.
Envy is a movie. I think Envy's really funny. Envy was shelved for years and then only released once. School of Rock was a hit and Jack Black was bankable. But I think that movie sat on the shelf for like 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
Before actually getting released. Vaporize. That's the thing in the movie. It's a spray that dissolves dog dew, and no one knows where it goes. Where does it go?
Did they answer that in the movie? I forget.
No, that's just the joke the whole time. Where does it go?
I remember that being the joke. I saw that movie in the theater.
That's awesome. I think that movie is really funny. Actually, I'm gonna watch Envy soon. I think that's about all the thoughts I have on Toys. It's still, and as much as I've read about it now, I can't say I understand it really that much better than I ever did, and I don't think I need to. I don't think that you need a complete cohesive understanding of what the fuck is going on in this movie. Sorry to give you another thing to bleep.
Oh, it's okay.
None of the in the featurette that's on the DVD, the first thing is like a bunch of actors say like, "Oh, I have no idea what this movie's about." It's like most of the cast just saying like, "Nope, no idea what's going on." Which is, a problem that translates to the screen, I think. But the movie is saying a lot of interesting things and in a beautifully visual way. And the soundtrack is another thing by itself that's just really great. So
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So, do you have further thoughts on Toys?
No, I think
cool.
I think I've said most of it, aside from like the sea swine being pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the bigger fish in episode 1 that I hate, but like small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
So assuming our country isn't under some sort of martial law next week, what should we be expecting to talk about?
Well, given we're all here again next week, we are going to be talking about a film that was pretty influential in our childhoods. It came out in 1993 and is about dinosaurs. And that film is, of course, Prehysteria.
Yes. Prehysteria, starring, I don't know his name, but the kid from Last Action Hero.
Brett Cullen.
Brett Cullen. Last Action Hero's Brett Cullen.
Yeah, so we will be discussing Prehysteria next week, and you can find that on Tubi.
Yes, a movie that we're talking about that you can stream.
Yes, free on Tubi.
We're now 2 out of 5 for movies that you can actually stream that we're talking about.
Yeah, this is a great one to watch with the kids. I knew it, definitely just like we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's like the imagination, like that it spurred in me as a child. But yeah, we will be talking about prehysteria. And so until that time, Alex, where can people find more of your works?
Check out at Alex Brunel on Twitter and Instagram for retweets and reblogs of information pertaining to things happening in the world.
Mm-hmm. And you can find us at Who Watches Pod on Twitter. We are on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
We are thinking about moving the video stream over entirely to YouTube. We are moving it somehow, doing something.
Yeah,
We're thinking about it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if it'll be next week, but we might try to simulcast.
Yeah.
And so
We'll post updates here.
Yeah, leave us some comments. Let us know where you would like to watch us.
Yeah, that would help. That would be a good input. I would like to know that information.
Yeah, and you can also find the show, the podcast form, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, all the iHeartRadio, all the big podcast catchers.
All the things.
Subscribe to us, leave reviews, and yeah, leave us feedback. It's all very appreciated. And so until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and stay smiling.